One of the most important things I've ever learned about media and literary analysis is the distinction between what happens in a story and what a story is about. And I feel like a really good example of this is this webtoon I've been reading for a little while now that I'm a pretty big fan of. It's called The Boxer. Some of you may have heard of it. I'm assuming you've read it if you're watching this, because this is not going to be me making a pitch as to why you should read it. This is me talking about the series for other people who've read it. The Boxer is very interesting because the title kind of straight up tells you what happens in the story. Not about. The story of the boxer tells the tale of people who are boxers. Specifically, the main character is a boxer who is very strong. Quite possibly the strongest boxer in the world. And how he goes up through the weight divisions on the international stage and just kind of beats the shit out of every single person he comes into contact with. And the various life stories of said people that he beats the crap out of. Now, while that's what happens in the Boxer is about the suffering and hardships that come with life, and kind of on a grander scale, asking the question, what is the meaning of life? Why do we exist? And it sort of bridges the gap between what happens in the story and what the story is about by going in depth into the backstories of the various characters and through a question that many of the characters get asked. What does boxing mean to you? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about most of the major characters that appear within the Boxer, and kind of talking about how their characters, their backstories, help build upon the themes and the overall message of the Boxer. And who better to start off with than our main character, the Boxer, you. Not you watching this, not Y-O-U, but you, Y-U, the name of the main character. If that is his name, Yu is interesting, because he is a fringe case of what happens when everything that can go wrong for a person does. He is a victim of everything that is wrong with this world. He is a person that has absolutely nothing. He doesn't even have a name. Yu, as far as we can tell, was the last name of his parents. His dad was a gangster, and his mom was some kind of escort. And their relationship did not work out too well. His mom had some trouble with being faithful, and his dad had some serious possessiveness. So he ended up locking her in a basement somewhere where she gave birth to Yu, and they spent years just kind of living in isolation and occasionally getting the shit beaten out of them by Yu's dad. So he's pretty much living in Plato's cave. His universe is this little basement room that has like a bathroom, a very meager kitchen area, and an old television set. That's Yu's universe. That's the world for him. And eventually, he gets out of this world and finds the world above, the world at large. He meets a bunch of new people, and he finds out that actually, yeah, kind of the entire world is kind of bad, because everyone, regardless of how good they are or whatever sort of dreams they hope to achieve, they are subject to the cruel heartlessness of the world. Everyone is subject to cruelty and disease and violence and suffering and death. Regardless of who you are or what you want to be, everyone just dies in the end. And you know what happens when you die? The world keeps on turning like you never existed. So why do you exist? Do we exist just to suffer and die? That's a pretty sad and frightening thing to think about for what exactly your life means. Like, you're here on this earth just so that you can be miserable and then die? you would probably have Yu's demeanor if you thought something like that. But I do think Yu's name may be kind of intentional. I have seen a few people suggest that Yu is supposed to kind of be you, the reader, the person watching or listening to this video. Because there are many times in our lives where we're just really down in the dumps. We're really depressed. We've kind of lost hope in everything. The world is full of suffering and hardship. People have a lot of hard times. People have had a lot of hard times over the last 2 years. They've lost their jobs. They haven't been able to, go out and do the same stuff as usual. We've been forced to isolate ourselves. A lot of people have lost family members and friends, loved ones. So a lot of people do have times in their life where they do think, what's the meaning of all this? What purpose is there to any of this bleak existence? I don't understand. I want to know. And you just feel devoid of hope. And that's the case for Yu, is he has no hope. There is no light in his life. Except for just a little tiny flash of something that he saw after both of his parents died. He kind of killed his dad in self-defense, because his dad was beating the shit out of him after his mom committed suicide, and Yu used the knife that his dad had to just kind of stab him. He encounters a certain strangely bioluminescent guy named Jay, which is another weird name. And his interaction with Jay, who is a fairly positive and, he's literally glowing. He's a luminescent person. You would imagine he would provide some kind of light in your existence just from looking at him. He has a flash of something that he's never really seen before and wants to see again, because it's not really clear what happens. We don't see what happens after this interaction between Jay and Yu, like what happens directly after it. Some people don't like Jay because they're like, did you seriously just find this malnourished, physically harmed child, like he's bloody and bruised, and you were just like, hey kid, life sure does suck. Well, don't worry, these stars are all shining for you. Anyway, bye. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of maybe inferred that Jay, I don't know, maybe took him to a hospital or something. Yu is in school by the time the story starts, so presumably someone helped him out with some things. So I like to think Jay at least helped with that a little bit, and then was like later, because Jay's kind of like a nomad. He just kind of goes around, or at least that's what he was doing prior to his return in the story. And the only thing in the world that Yu has any kind of connection to is this cat, which seems to carry on the spirit of this lady that he met after escaping from the basement, who then died of some kind of intestinal cancer. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was some kind of cancer around like the digestive tract. That's the only thing in the world that he cares about, and his primary motivation is finding some kind of light. And he sees this light in the eyes of a fellow student named Injay, whose name in the translation is Jay, which means whenever you talk about him out loud, it sounds like you're talking about Jay, or vice versa. So I'm going to call him Injay anytime I bring him up to avoid confusion. He sees this light in his eyes when he's standing up to a bully named Ryu. And it's this light that he sees when Injay tries to box that leads him to join up with Coach K and decide to become a professional boxer, because he thinks he may be able to find that light through boxing. And as the story goes on, he kind of gets hints of it occasionally, but for the most part, it's just kind of a dark descent further into a lack of humanity. And eventually, before his title match with Jay, and right before we get his backstory, the cat dies, because the cat's really fucking old, and had seemingly just kind of been hanging on to life to provide you with some kind of companionship and something to care about. And as you can imagine, when Yu loses the last thing in the world that he has any kind of emotional connection to, he kind of, goes off the deep end. I don't know if that's actually the right way to describe it. He completely falls into darkness. He is consumed by despair and malice, and he just wants to lash out against this cruel, unfair world through, violence. Is hitting people fun? Doesn't really seem like it. Yu does not get any personal enjoyment out of boxing. Boxing on its own doesn't really mean anything to him. When Yu is asked, what does boxing mean to you? Dodging and hitting. It means what Kei told him he had to do to box. There's no deeper meaning to it in any kind. There's no real motivation behind it, at least not one that he can kind of explain to someone in an interview. It's just cold, emotionless movements. There is no meaning behind anything that Yu does in boxing. He is trying to find some kind of meaning. In the meantime, there is no meaning behind anything that he does. The first real, serious foe that Yu encounters is the lightweight world champion Jean-Pierre Manuel. And Jean-Pierre is the character we encounter who is the most similar to Yu. They kind of look the same, he has the same sort of demeanor, and this seems to largely be because Jean also has experienced the hardships and cruelty of the world. His parents split up, his mom was unfaithful, his dad was kind of an incompetent idiot, they split up, and for some reasons after that, his dad decided to abandon him. So, much like Yu, Jean was left alone in the world by his own family. He had nothing for a time. And through his realization about how imperfect and flawed humans are, he wanted to become a perfect being, someone who is not afflicted by the same flaws and imperfections that humans do, that do stupid, illogical things like his parents did. And as such, Jean is not someone at the same level of despair or inhumanity that Yu is, but he strives for it because he thinks that's his way to escape from, kind of the emotions that he feels, the actual despair that he feels. He wants to escape through becoming a perfect, inhuman being. And he sees that perfection in Yu. He sees Yu as an emotionless, perfect monster. And his arc, his training, his preparation for his title match with Yu is him trying to basically artificially become the same thing as Yu. However, Yu seems to have insane natural talent in addition to the ridiculous amounts of suffering that led to him becoming the way he is. It does seem like, people are able to become stronger through suffering and hardship. And close encounters with death, that's able to unlock something within people. And Jean reaches the level of awareness and perception that Yu already has to an extent. He gets close to that level. But he still gets the absolute shit beaten out of him by Yu. But he doesn't care, because this is him getting a front row seat to the ideal that he pursues, and he absolutely loves it. And he has no concern for his own life. He doesn't care if he's going to die. In fact, by the end of the match, he's pretty much like, yes, you kill me. Show me for the last time what my ideal looks like. Show me a monster. Show me a perfect being. And the reason that Jean doesn't care about his life at all, he will throw away his life to see his ideal realized, is because life is fucked up. Life is something where you live, you suffer and struggle, and then you die. Regardless of whatever you want or whatever's going on for you, you're eventually going to die in the end. So why not pursue an ideal that you're willing to give up your life for? Because you're going to end up there anyway. Why care about whether or not you're going to die? Nothing that you do is going to stop you from eventually reaching that point. So, who cares? That's why, what does boxing mean to you? To Jean, boxing is the pursuit of perfection. Boxing has been his way of trying to make himself into someone without flaws, someone that doesn't have the flaws of any other boxer, someone who has perfect technique, but also someone who is perfect and that he lacks the flaws that are possessed by human beings. However, Jean is not perfect, because Jean is still human. And the biggest distinction between Jean and you, the reason that Jean does not become like you ultimately, is because Jean does have people in his life. He has his coach, who was the person that found him and took him in after his dad abandoned him. And he has his wife, Stella, who is his coach's daughter, childhood sweethearts or something. And Stella, being someone that loves him, and also someone who is going to be the mother of his child, because she is pregnant, gives Jean something that he has longed for, something that he wanted because he came from a dysfunctional home and because his dad abandoned him. He doesn't want to be alone. He wants to have people in his life that he loves and who love him. And ultimately, being able to have something like that is worth much more than having some kind of ideal that leads to you throwing your life away. Yes, you're going to die. No matter what you do, someday you're going to die. But, in the meantime, why don't you try spending some time with these people who make your life a little brighter? Because, Stella said the same words to him that he wanted to say to his dad. Please don't go. Please don't leave me alone. I don't want to be alone in this world. And that's really what you kind of wants. What he needs is to not be alone, to have someone. And having someone, anyone in his life, is ultimately what sets Jean apart from you and what leads him away from the path of seeking inhuman perfection. The next great opponent that you encounters, the junior welterweight world champion Yuto Takeda, is one of my favorite characters in The Boxer. I think he's probably still the best character. In terms of the actual content we get for fleshing him out and understanding him, he's probably the best. Yuto is an interesting fellow because he's an anomaly. Here's the deal. This is an important thing in The Boxer that they kind of drill into your head from relatively early on, is that every kind of, how do I put this? If you succeed in this world, however far you get is due to talent. You will become the best in the world at something because you have the talent for it. There will be some degree of hard work to supplement it. But ultimately, people who have talent are the ones that are going to succeed. And those who don't have talent are the ones who are going to fail. It doesn't matter what you want to be or what you want to do in this world. If you want to be a boxer, if you want to be an artist, a musician, a cop, a doctor, a teacher, a scientist, whatever. It doesn't matter how much you want to be that thing or how hard you work to be that thing. If you don't have the talent or skill to learn how to do that profession, then tough shit, my guy. You're not going to do it. And then there's Yuto Takeda. Yuto is an absolute anomaly because he has absolutely zero talent whatsoever. When he got brought to his coach's gym for the first time by his dad, they realized, oh my god, this kid doesn't have a speck of talent. He has absolutely no understanding of the flow of energy. He doesn't understand how to throw a punch. he can never box. This kid has no hope whatsoever of being a boxer. And then, as unfortunately happens to a lot of people, Yuto loses his parents. His mom dies of some kind of disease shortly after his dad got killed in an alleyway saving a woman from being assaulted by a group of guys. So, for no real good reason, Yuto loses his parents, and he ends up basically being raised by his coach, who was childhood friends with his parents. So, for her as well, she's really consumed with despair. She just lost the two people she cared about most in her life. So, for her, it's like, alright, you guys are gone. Yuto, you are going to become my reason for living. I am going to train you to be a fucking boxer. I don't care if you have no talent whatsoever. I'm going to train you to be a boxer. Because that is the only thing I have going for me anymore. That's the only thing I could do for your parents. So they train Yuto to be a boxer. And, you know, he does a lot of training. He gets pretty strong. But his growth ends. The peak of his growth is kind of abrupt. It's very low down on the ladder. He'll never have the skill of a professional boxer. It's just not going to happen. But, you know, him being instilled with the values of good and justice from his dad, he still does what he can. He is a good role model for people at school. He stands up for people who are bullied. He'll fight a bully if he has to, but his primary concern is being like, hey guys, let's get along. He's even nice to the bully. Tries to convince him to be a good person. But eventually he encounters a street thug who is aiming to become a professional boxer, and he is one of the, frankly, dime a dozen geniuses that there are in the boxer. This dude has the talent to become a world champion. And every time that Yuto tries to fight him, first time is to try and save his friend who, came from a household where his mom was some kind of escort and got dumped off by some Yakuza guy and has alcoholism and is abusive towards him. Yuto gets the shit kicked out of him. And then as a result, his friend has to go work on some fishing boat to try and pay for his mom and, kind of loses all hope in his life and thinks about killing himself. Yuto wants to get stronger. He needs to get stronger now. It doesn't matter that he doesn't have the talent to get stronger. He needs to be stronger. So he trains. He trains every single day. He drops out of school. No time for school, only time for practicing. Pretty much every day he goes, he runs up on this guy and is like, yo, I'm gonna fight you. And he gets the shit kicked out of him. Day in, day out. For what? 3 years? For a fucking while. Train all day, get the shit kicked out of you, repeat. Day in, day out for years. Until eventually, one day, Yuto has some kind of weird realization. It's very strange. You see, the way Yuto learned how to box was essentially memorizing the results on a multiplication table as opposed to actually remembering how to multiply. So he has no idea how to actually throw a jab or something. He just knows the steps for each specific move. But after a certain point, subconsciously, without even realizing it, he has a better understanding of how to box. His growth peak, the limits of his potential increase, which is supposed to be completely impossible, but because of the absolutely absurd, inhuman amount of effort and struggling that Yuto put into it, he actually grows a little. And little by little, through more training, more getting the crap kicked out of him, eventually his growth, his potential, his talent surpasses the guy that was beating the shit out of him, and he knocks him the hell out. And eventually, Yuto becomes a pro boxer, and he becomes the junior welterweight world champion. What does boxing mean to you? To me, boxing is proof that no matter what, there's always hope. Through boxing, I will prove there's always hope. No matter how hard things are for you, no matter your degree of talent or skill, there is always hope. As long as you still believe in yourself and your ability to eventually succeed, then you can do it. That's how he inspires his friend to not give up, because his friend remembers him and the inspiration that he gave him. He provides inspiration to kids that have rare diseases, that have to go through very painful treatments all the time. He inspires people who weren't able to become a boxer because they didn't have the same amount of talent as people like you. So in his match against you, it's kind of a double-sided meaning. On the one hand, it's hard work versus talent. And on the other hand, it's hope versus despair. Yuto's hope, just kind of in general, in spite of everything, and Yu's bottomless despair. And what happens is Yu is able to just kind of instantly copy the moves that Yuto has spent his entire life learning how to do, and beats the ever-loving shit out of him. Because no matter how much hard work you put in, there are some things in this world that you can't overcome. No matter how many weights you lift, you're never going to be able to bench press a mountain. Like, it's just impossible. You can't do it. You're never going to be able to jump over a building. You're never going to be able to, like, have the same brain functions as a supercomputer. Like, there are some things that are just straight up impossible. And overcoming you is something that's just impossible. However, Yuto is already an anomaly. He is already someone for whom a lack of talent doesn't matter, because he's somehow able to learn how to have talent. He's able to increase his own potential. And because he refuses to give in, because he refuses to lose hope, he gets back up. And the growth of his talent, of his potential, becomes exponential, to the point where he actually starts pushing you back. He never hits him, but you actually kind of gets put on the back foot a little bit. And it's this hope, it's this drive to keep going on in spite of how hopeless the situation is, that for just an instant, you gets a glimpse of that same light once again. Yuto has the same light in him that Injay and Jay have. It's probably because the dude's basically a shonen protagonist, but you know, he's just that good. And he is very energized by seeing this light in Yuto, and then beats the ever-loving shit out of him even more. Just absolutely demolishes him, shatters his jaw, ends his boxing career. That's the finish line for Yuto. He could have become the most powerful boxer in the world, and it's cut short there by you. Because that's how some things happen for people. No matter what sort of opportunities or potential you may have, sometimes life is just like, nope, get that shit out of here. However, Yuto is not sad about it, because the inspiration and help that he provided for other people is real. It's still there. There are other people that are still inspired by him. His help did not go away because he lost. And he's still very grateful to his coach for, you know, teaching him everything, for making him into a boxer. And she's grateful to him for providing such an inspiration. Because life is a gift. And even though things are rough, and a lot of times things don't go your way, either because you're unfortunate or because you just kind of don't have the talent to make things go your way, there's still a lot of things to find meaning and happiness from in life. Now, since we're about to talk about a guy whose primary motivation is monetary gain, it's probably a good time to talk about my own monetary gain and give a shout out to my wonderful patrons. Special thanks to Neo, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, K-God, Chris Redfield, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Mac Campaign, Wave of Manga, Chuck's Feed and Seed, Jakester Easy, and Play Free Labs. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at some point during videos, access to reviews for The Boxer, how convenient, or, coming very soon, reviews for One Piece, you can always join my Patreon as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. Middleweight world champion Fabrizio Santorino is kind of the first guy we meet who's almost objectively a huge piece of shit. Him and his brother Marco, who's his manager, are dirty boxers. In their mind, boxing is not a sport where someone who's better than their opponent is supposed to win. No. Boxing is entertainment. It's like WWE. So you gotta do stuff that gets the audience invested, that gets them riled up, that makes a lot of people tune in to watch and pay a lot of money for tickets or pay-per-view. So they bribe the ref, they bribe the people that check for drug usage, they bribe the people that check to make sure that they don't have fucking plaster in their gloves, and they have absolutely vicious, disgusting, dirty boxing matches with people, to the point where it's barely boxing anymore. It's really just two guys beating the shit out of each other in the ring. Oh, and what they do outside of, like, stuff that's illegal in the sport is stuff that's just straight up kind of illegal, like threatening people, or fucking with their family members, or poisoning them with, like, I don't know, laxatives and stuff. Like, they don't give a single shit about being a good sport, about fair play. All that matters to them is making a ton of money. Now, why do they care so much about making money? Well, here's the reason. Two of them grew up very poor in, I'm pretty sure, Spain. I'm pretty sure they're Spanish. I'm pretty sure, like, the general aesthetic of their town is, like, Spain. And they have Spanish names, I think. Their mom was very poor, kinda did a little bit of sleeping around to pay for rent and stuff. And they were never really able to have anything. So as a result, they grew up in not so great conditions. And, you know, just kind of wanted to have a better life for their family. They eventually meet this hobo guy who teaches them how to box. So they decide to start doing boxing to make a living. And then they find out that their mom has, what was it? There was something wrong with her brain. It wasn't cancer, but she had something that developed in her brain that would kill her if they weren't able to afford a surgery for it, which they were able to do, but the problem with it was that it could come back. So they would always need to make sure that they have enough money to eventually pay for that surgery. So they decided to go about making as much money as they possibly could, regardless of morals, because being a good person really doesn't matter if you're not able to take care of and provide for the people you care about. So they would become terrible people for the sake of taking care of their mother. And they kind of get an interesting lesson from their mentor, who dies due to, I think it was like a break-in. Like he gets stabbed in a break-in while protecting their mom and sister. Dude had a pretty rough life. He became a boxer, and then eventually became a guy working with, like, the mob, and that resulted in him doing a bunch of illegal stuff, including, I think, being a hitman. So he killed people. His family got killed. Guy ended up being completely destitute. At the point we meet him, he is an old guy with nothing. His teeth are falling out. He lives in the streets. His life sucks. His life was pretty awful. And that's the way life is. You get older, your physical abilities reach a peak, and then eventually decline. You will lose everything after a lifetime of struggling and suffering, and eventually you're gonna die. That's life. So that's kind of the lesson that he had for them. So, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. What does boxing mean to you? boxing's entertainment. Boxing is a way to get people to make money. It doesn't matter if people love you or hate you. If they have strong feelings about you, they're going to watch your boxing matches, and they're going to pay a lot of money to do it. So then comes along Fabrizio's title match with you, and they do some stuff to try and fuck with him. As a result, Kay has his assistant Carmen basically be his personal bodyguard and assistant. Her and you get kind of close. They go out on like a date to a theme park, and seemingly, because Carmen appeared to be getting close to you, the Santorinos kidnapped her and beat the shit out of her to mentally put you off his game. And as a result, it instead put you into a psychotic rage in which he wanted to beat Fabrizio to death. Now, the twist was that actually the Santorinos just kind of kidnapped her and then let her go. They wanted you to kind of like throw his match with Kay, his match with Fabrizio, and then Kay would lose interest in him. Because what they noticed was that you was starting to get close to Carmen, and that suggested him having some kind of human emotions, and that was something that Kay wouldn't want. Kay doesn't like his fighters being human. He wants people who are like the ideal that Jean was seeking. Just emotionless, inhuman monsters. Just machines of strength that harm people. Because that's what he likes. And by throwing the match, Kay would lose interest in you and you would be allowed to live like a normal life. But Carmen was like, no, I'm not doing that. That's not going to work. So then Kay had his assistant beat the shit out of Carmen and frame it on the Santorinos to get you all riled up and really angry so that he would be extra violent. And then, knowing that the Santorinos did doping, Kay went and got like secret military super soldier steroids to hop you up on, so he turned into like a red-skinned demon and just beat the ever-loving fuck out of Fabrizio for 10 rounds. Every other time that you has fought, his goal has been to knock out his opponent. This match was the exception. You wanted to punish Fabrizio. He wanted to make him suffer and then kill him. And make no mistake, this was like the one time where you was actively trying to kill someone. In the other matches, it's just you too strong for everyone else. He's just so strong that they put their lives at risk by fighting him seriously. In this case, no, he wants to kill him. He didn't even give Fabrizio like chances to fall down. Like, he was torturing him. So why didn't they just throw in the towel? Well, Fabrizio felt like if he finally gave up in a match where he was kind of getting his just desserts, it would feel like everything he'd done before was for nothing. The idea was that you can't ever stop doing what you're doing, because then that implies that maybe there's some kind of line that you shouldn't cross, and maybe we shouldn't have done everything that we did in the past, which, you know, they kind of have that realization. But also, like, why would I give up now when I'm getting what I deserve? Shouldn't I have stopped earlier? I feel like everything that I've done up to now would be useless if I decided, no, getting what I deserve, getting an actual real fight like I have other people go through, and I'm going to give up, I can't do it. The other reason is the Boxing Association really doesn't like the Santorinos, and they were like, hey, how about we have Fabrizio get murdered in very satisfying fashion for the audience? And so they weren't going to let Marco throw in the towel. So ultimately, Fabrizio's match against you, in which he almost dies, is kind of punishment for them being kind of shitty, terrible people, even if it's for a good goal. The path to hell is paved in good intentions. You shouldn't be doing bad stuff for a good purpose, because in their mind, life is unfair, it's cruel, it doesn't care about you, it doesn't matter if you're a good or bad person as long as you're able to do what you have to do. Now, fortunately, Fabrizio doesn't die because he gets saved by Jesus. Jesus. We'll get into that later. But yeah, thank God Fabrizio doesn't die. And after this life or death experience, they come to the realization that, like, hey, do we really need to keep doing, like, this villain act? Do we really need to keep being so terrible? I think we can maybe... It'll be a lot more work, it'll be a lot harder to succeed and make the money that we need by being legitimate boxers, but I don't think people are going to try and murder me in a roid rage if we play fair, you know? And they clean up their act. When Fabrizio becomes the interim world championship, or I guess... Is he interim, or was his and... I think his and Jay's match were to become interim world champion. He has felt the immense satisfaction that comes through achieving something legitimately, achieving something through actual hard work, like Yuto. And now that him and Marco are being serious about boxing, like they're really trying to be boxers, they're not just trying to be showmen and make money, they become way better. Their actual skill and strength is way higher than it used to be. And we'll get into a little bit more detail with that stuff when I talk about Jay later on. But Fabrizio has like one of the best character developments in the series. It's really good. It's really great stuff. And of course, the ultimate message of this fight, you know, Fabrizio and Yu's fight, is kind of the overall message of the series, I think, is that life is very hard and unfair. It's full of suffering, and eventually you die at the end. There's not really any meaning to it. We really do maybe exist just to exist. We're just kind of here. However, if you have people who you love and who love you and make this very unfair existence a little brighter, a little more enjoyable, then that's all that matters. It's not about finding meaning, it's about finding fulfillment. You don't need to have a reason to exist, you just need to find something that makes your existence meaningful to you and maybe to someone else. Now this next guy, the Cruiserweight World Champion Viktor Grigoryevich, is a strange one because he's kind of a comic relief character. He doesn't have that much depth to him. He is the least serious character in a relatively serious series. And why is that? It's a little bit strange. And I think the reason is that Viktor's kind of dumb. He's kind of stupid. He does have his own bad things that happened in his life, but they're not really important. We get some flashes of it, but the author's like, yeah, Viktor's backstory is really not that important, don't worry about it. Because Viktor doesn't really care about finding some deep meaning to his life or anything. He's not into all that existential stuff. He just wants to have fun. The dude loves throwing his all-powerful Russian hook, and that's it. Doesn't even care about, like, you know, learning how to do other boxing stuff. He's just like, no, I just want to do the Russian hook. And that's all he does. He exclusively does that. He's a one-punch man. And he has a fucking blast. Because what's boxing to him? It's fun! It's an opportunity to have fun. So the dude is just, he's a hoot. He's the life of the party. He doesn't worry about any of that stuff. He has absurd luck. His luck is insane. It gives him, like, perhaps greater potential than almost anyone else in the series, because anything that can go wrong for his opponent, like even at the last moment, will go wrong. Basically, every possible combination of unlucky circumstances can occur for them, just so that Viktor wins. But in addition to that, Viktor's actually kind of a strong guy, and if he actually did try to become a serious boxer that did more than just a Russian hook, then he could have actually maybe challenged Aaron Tide, who is the guy at the peak before Yu reaches that point. He's the strongest boxer in the world who's established himself. So the reason Viktor is not like having a bunch of these big existential crises or anything like a lot of the other characters is because he just doesn't care about that. Doesn't matter. Viktor is a guy who's living in the moment. He loves his mohawks, he loves throwing Russian hooks, and he loves, being able to have a mohawk and throw Russian hooks in boxing matches. All that other stuff, inconsequential. Doesn't matter. Life is short. And if you blink, you might miss it. I don't know, whatever that speech at the end of Ferris Bueller was. Life goes by really fast, so you might as well try and enjoy the time that you're here for. And that seems to kind of be Viktor's thing. He's all about enjoying life. He just wants to have fun. Any big meaning beyond that, forget about it. And that's why Viktor is seemingly the only person that doesn't have really deep-seated emotional issues or anything like that. He's just kind of there to be fun and have fun, and that's why no one really takes him seriously. Even Kay is like, yeah, Grigoryevich is a guy that we have to fight before we get to Eren, but, like, don't worry about him. He's not going to be any trouble for you. So, yeah, that's why he's the character that we spend the least amount of time talking about in this video. The man who we've been kind of setting up as sort of the final boss ever since Yu started his boxing career is the heavyweight world champion Eren Tide. Now, Eren's an interesting case because he is the only other person in this world who Kay says is like Yu, that they are similar to each other. And he is the last boxer who fought as part of Kay's gym who went on to become a world champion. One of his prized fighters. And unlike Yu, whose superhuman ability is his speed and time perception, Eren is just a monster in terms of his sheer physical strength. His muscle structure, his muscle density, whatever. The dude is basically Wakatsuki from Kengan, but he does boxing. And Eren is an interesting case because his circumstances were kind of similar to Yu, and that they are both these monsters that are just beyond human capability. They're beyond geniuses. They are truly superhuman. And Eren has faced hardships in his life because of that. His strength is something that he's had trouble controlling. He accidentally killed his childhood friend just because they got into an argument, and he just kind of shoved her and didn't realize how strong he was, and she ended up dying, like cracked her head open on the floor. And that resulted in Eren always thinking of himself as being some kind of monster. Why do I exist? Why do I have strength that's so great? All I can really do with it is hurt people. And he tried to live his life without harming anyone. He became like a chauffeur. But one day he eventually has a fateful encounter with Kay, and a guy who's trying to murder his future wife, and he blows the guy's fucking head off with a punch. He's that strong. Now Kay, being Kay, is like, oh fuck, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Hey buddy, have you ever wondered about the meaning of your existence? Work for me and I'll tell you. Now, according to Kay, the meaning behind Eren's existence is that he exists to exert his strength over other people. He was born to be the strongest person in the world. He was born to reign above all. He brings honor and victory upon himself, and he brings defeat and despair upon others. Other people don't matter. You are supposed to do everything you can with your strength to benefit yourself. You are given strength to exert it over others and do as you please. Now, Eren does this for a while. The fame and fortune is all fine and dandy. It's nice, it's great. But after a while, he doesn't feel any meaning in it. It's just him kind of, engaging in acts of excess and debauchery just for the sake of trying to find something to give him a reason to wake up in the morning. He writhes in this pit of despair and meaninglessness. He still doesn't understand why he exists, because he gets no fulfillment out of beating up other people. What's boxing to you? I don't know, I tried to find some meaning in it. It's just work. It doesn't mean anything beyond that to me. It's just what I do to make money. It's what I'm good at. I don't particularly enjoy it. I don't really find any satisfaction in it. It's just what I do to support myself and my family. And Eren learns what meaning he has to exist from his wife after he, meets her. It's not his wife yet, his future wife. He meets her again after some time. And she tells him what she thinks the meaning of life is. And, of course, this is kind of the meaning that we get from Fabrizio's match, which is that there's not some grand purpose for each individual person. You do not have some goal that is deigned for you by some grand design created by God or something. People just exist to love each other. People are born so that they can love their fellow man and make their lives more enjoyable. Because people who don't have love in their lives are kind of miserable. They don't really see any kind of reason beyond maybe a job or something, and even then, there's not really any kind of light in their lives. So, all you really need is love. All you need is to have people who brighten up your day, and that's it. You have your day brightened up by other people who love you, and you do the same for them. That's the reason we exist. Now, this is challenged when Eren has his title match against Yu. He originally says, yeah, I'm done boxing, I'm going to retire right now, because he doesn't want to play in Decay's hands. But Carmen goes to him and his wife and pleads with him to have his fight with Yu, because he is the only person in the world that can beat Yu. And if that happens, Kay is going to lose interest in Yu and he'll let him go, and he'll be able to have a chance at living a relatively normal life. So, much like how his wife saved him, Eren wants to try and save Yu. And this doesn't really work out, because you're not really able to save someone when you're fighting them in a death match, because that's what it becomes. The two most powerful people in the world going all out against each other. Eren having punches that can blow a guy's head off. Yeah, even when we're early on in the match and Eren is still trying to save Yu, he's like, yeah, you should try and block this because I may break all of your ribs. Sorry, by the way. That's not really a way to save a person. And eventually, Eren comes to a realization that Yu's really too far gone. There's not really any humanity in Yu. He is under Kay's control. I'm going to die if I don't do anything. Yu is going to kill me because Yu doesn't care about me. Yu does not care about human life. He just goes through the motions and doesn't really care about the conclusion of it. He lives only for the motions, not anything that comes before or after them. So I have to fight for my life. If I'm going to get out of here, I have to kill Yu, as opposed to like throwing in the towel or something. I don't know. Couldn't he just ask his coach to throw in the towel? I understand his coach wanted to. Like, after a certain point, everyone was like, we got to stop this shit, but I can't stop watching. It's like watching a train wreck. It's horrendous. It's grotesque. But you're so fascinated by it that you can't stop watching it. I mean, the two most powerful people in the world, the two most powerful boxers in history, there has never been a boxing match like this before, and there will probably never be one again. How can we stop watching it? That's why he doesn't throw in the towel, but, Eren could have just left. Anyway, they go into a real death match, because Yu makes Eren feel his own mortality for once. He realizes how fragile and easily lost life is. And he's like, nah, I'm gonna get back to my family. I'm gonna kill you and survive. So, shit gets really down to the wire. It gets to a point where there's gonna be a double KO. Yu's gonna punch Eren in the heart with his punches that are able to, like, break through fucking steel or whatever. And Eren's gonna blow Yu's head off. And right before they're both about to kill each other, Eren sees himself in Yu. He was a lonely child who wasn't able to connect with anyone, thought he was a monster, and couldn't figure out any meaning behind his existence. And he sees that Yu was much the same case. Yu was a child who was born in the worst of circumstances. Just had everything that could have gone wrong for him did go wrong, and he just had nothing. There was no love in his life. No one provided for him when he was a child, and it was much the same way for him. And Eren remembers what his wife taught him. You know, we exist to be loved. Yu is someone that needs that if he's to be saved. So he pulls his punch, he doesn't hit Yu, and he takes the punch to the chest, which ultimately puts him into a coma. So now Eren has been taken away from his wife and his daughter. They're left to live without him while he's in this coma. And that's because he made some kind of bet. He wagered his life on the idea that you will be able to find someone that can show him love, that can take him out of this pit of despair and meaninglessness that he himself had started to fall into. And that if he gives up his life for that, that's okay. Because that means he would save you from the existence that he was suffering from and could have fallen into if he hadn't decided to stop working for K. Speaking of K, he's kind of the main antagonist of the series, which is an interesting dynamic because he's also the active mentor of the main character. Though, I guess Yu's position as the main character is also kind of unique because he's also kind of the main antagonistic force. In every match, Yu becomes the antagonist, and instead the people that he's supposed to be usurping become the protagonists of their respective matches. Because K is the one that is trying to further Yu down this path into inhumanity, into being divorced from all kinds of human emotions and just becoming a monster. And the reason for this is because K has seen the world for what it is. He's seen how meaningless everything is. And he's decided the only thing that matters in this world is strength. The only thing that we have is our strength and our ability to exert it over other people. If you have strength, you are supposed to use it to your own betterment, or more so, the downfall of other people. K was in the military, he was special forces, and as you can imagine, being in the military and being in special forces, the guy got a little traumatized when he was early on in his career. He met some kid that he saved out of like a hostage crisis or whatever, and then eventually that kid became like a guerrilla fighter or whatever that K himself ended up killing at one point to save his squad mates. And then his wife and son died in a freak truck accident. So the dude was kind of like, oh, fuck. Like, just everyone's dying. Everyone dies. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much I care about you or what you mean to me or anything. You die. Sometimes you die at my own hands. He tracks down and holds the truck driver at gunpoint and asks him, like, yo, why did you decide to drive into my wife and son instead of those other people? Ultimately, it was because I would have saved more people. Oh, so you were able to decide that those other people's lives were worth more than the lives of my family. Okay, I see. Yeah, I got you. And when the dude's like begging for his life, because, you know, his daughter's birthday is coming up, he wants to be with his wife and daughter, Kay's like, oh yeah, Everybody dies like that. Everybody is afraid of dying. Everybody wants to be around at least just one more day. They still want to see the people they care about. They want to live. But when it's your time to die, tough luck. Doesn't matter. Everyone dies. So he shoots the guy. Somehow he gets away with this. Somehow he's never caught. It's presumably because K has special forces and he knows how to discreetly murder someone. And he eventually comes to the conclusion that strength is the only thing that matters in this world. Strength gives you the ability to decide whether you live or die, whether other people live or die. The ultimate power in this world is the power to decide whether or not a person lives or dies. When he was a kid and his grandfather passed away, he could see all of the fear and despair in his grandfather's eyes as his life slipped away. And then after that moment, all of the things that they had done together, all of their memories, did not exist anymore. You know, at least for him, because he was dead. When you die, your body, your person, just becomes a hollow husk, just a big chunk of bone and meat. You don't exist anymore, assuming there's not an afterlife or anything. If you don't think there's an afterlife, if you think this is it, when you die, you don't exist anymore. So, you are able to fight for your own existence based on how strong you are. If you are stronger than other people, you are essentially able to decide how long you're able to continue existing for. And then in turn, you are able to decide whether or not other people should be allowed to continue existing or not. You are able to decide whether someone stops existing. Sounds like a bit of a god complex, if you ask me. The power to decide whether or not people have the right to exist. So then, as you would imagine, he imprints that ideology onto his students, or tries to, and these boxers, who are all stronger than him, are pretty much his way of vicariously seeing his ideal realized. He wants to see the person who is superior to everyone else. He wants to see the pinnacle of strength, because someone who is stronger than everyone else in the world would be able to decide whether or not everyone else is allowed to exist. You would become a god. You are the absolute power in this world if you are stronger than everyone else. He wanted to see that realized in Aaron. It didn't happen. He got to see it realized in you. And that's why he doesn't want to let him go. That's why he likes him so much, is because you, as someone who's been exposed to how bleak our existence is, he has no attachments. He has no real emotions anymore. He's emotionless. He doesn't have the ethics or emotions that hold back other boxers, other people with strength, like Aaron. Without any of those restrictions, he's basically just emotionless strength. He is an embodiment of strength and violence. And that is why Kay wants you as his boxer. That is why he is so obsessed with him. And that's why he'll never let him go. Everything that happens throughout Yu's boxing career is part of Kay's efforts to turn him into his ideal, his perfect boxer, the perfect absolute being. So, how do we beat the main antagonist? Who beats the main antagonist? Well, one would assume that the protagonist beats the main antagonist. Now, something interesting happens kind of earlier on in the series, is that it's established there are multiple protagonists. Yu is the protagonist who's also like the final boss. Injay is kind of like a shonen protagonist. Ryu is also a villain protagonist. And then we have the true protagonist. They straight up say he is the real protagonist. Jay. Now, before I get into talking about Jay, some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, actually a decent amount of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, is in chapters that are currently behind the Webtoon FastPass at the time of recording this. So it's out there. You're able to read it. You know, they have the chapters out on YouTube and stuff. So if you've already seen what happens, coolio. If you haven't yet, big spoiler warning. I am going to spoil what happens. It's effectively Okay, actually, I'm not going to describe that because that could also be considered a spoiler. Listen, if you haven't read this stuff yet, if you haven't finished the Jay fight, save this to your watch later, come back to this after you do. I really don't want to spoil anyone on this. Leave while you can. This is your final warning. Okay, I'm gonna assume that anyone that's still here is someone who either has already read this stuff or doesn't give a shit, which I don't entirely understand, but I have to have some kind of respect for your resolve in that. So, Jay is a bit of a weird one. Jay is, well, once again, weirdly bioluminescent. I don't understand. Like, his hair and his eyes are literally glowing. His skin is he's like a big lamp. He's weird because we don't really get much of a background for him at all. We find out he's from this orphanage. He got interested in boxing from a young age, and he started his boxing career at around the time that Bob Norris, who was a boxer for K, had also started his career. So like 10, 15 years ago. I think probably 15 years ago. And then retired maybe 10 years ago. Because, when you do something like boxing, unless you're really young, and if you have some kind of career where you don't really get hurt that often, usually you're not going to box for a really long time. But also we find out some stuff about some other stuff about Jay. And also, maybe it was more 20 years ago or something. I don't know. It's not really clear how long Jay did boxing for. We don't know much about his backstory. And his backstory is really not that important. Because Jay is really meant to be more of kind of a manifestation of ideas and the theme, rather than a person intended to introduce and further the theme. Everything up until this point, all of these fights have been building up upon this theme. What's the meaning of life? Why do we exist? What are we supposed to do in the face of life being so terrible? All of this builds up to Jay, who is intended to kind of provide an answer, because he's the source of light. He is the thing that Yu has sought out. It's the reason he started boxing. And at this point where Yu has lost everything, he wants to know, what is the answer? What's the meaning of life? Why is life so terrible? Why do I exist? What am I? Please tell me the answer. And Jay is the only person in the world that can really do this for him. Because Jay, as it turns out from his match with Fabrizio, is also someone like you and Aaron. According to Bob, he's actually the strongest boxer in the world. But he's never shown this before. Why is that? Well, Jay is kind of weird in another way. And that his record is not that great. It's kind of a so-so record. He has a lot of wins, but he also has a lot of losses. So why does everyone care about him so much? Why is everyone so interested in Jay if he's really not that remarkable in terms of his record? Well, because his record doesn't really matter. When people watch Jay's matches, when people are in Jay's matches, not in Jay's matches, when people are fighting Jay, they feel something that they don't feel in other boxing matches, and they're not really sure how to describe it. It's some kind of inspiration. Boxers who had just started their career, rookies, would have furious bouts with him, but established champions would absolutely get their shit rocked by him. His strength is just as inconsistent as his record. So, Jay does something to make people feel some kind of inspiration. He makes people feel like their match with him is something that their entire career had been leading up to. All of his matches have gone down in history. There's something about it. He makes people feel some kind of emotional investment in his fight. He always, no matter who he's going up against, no matter whether he wins or loses, makes people feel there was some kind of meaning behind the fight. What does boxing mean to you? Jay kind of gives an answer, but Jay is more so meant to bring out that question for everyone that he goes up against. Jay thinks about that in his fight against The Rock, where he's seeing all of his habits and tendencies, his fighting style. He thinks about everything that he went through in order to craft himself into the type of boxer that he is. And he realizes, oh, that's your life. That's what boxing means to you. When you are a boxer, you dedicate most of your life to training and preparing for the next match. Everything that you do is brought out when you stand in the ring. When you go in the ring and you go toe-to-toe with someone, you are showing off everything that has led up to that moment. That's your life. That's what boxing means to you. Jay sees that in other people, and he helps other people realize that. That's why other people find him so fascinating, inspiring. That's why everyone's so interested in him. That's why everyone's so excited for his return and for his match against you. Because his record suggests, oh, he doesn't stand a chance. He's going to get annihilated by you. But all of his matches are really something to behold. So we all want to see what's going to happen. So Jay fights you, and by fight, I mean he stands in the ring and lets you, who is currently consumed with despair and grief at the loss of everything he cares about in his own existence, and he lets you beat the ever-loving shit out of him. He absolutely tortures Jay for 12 rounds, just like the Fabrizio match. He absolutely massacres Jay. But something is strange. Unlike anyone else that you has fought against, Jay does not even once try to land an attack against you. Not at any point does he try to hurt you. He just lets you let it all out. All that. All of the death and despair and grief and suffering. Everything that's Yu's life. He lets it all out. He sees all of it. He experiences all of it with his own flesh. I love the panel from when the fight starts. Yu's throwing his demon punch, and it's just this avalanche of death behind him. Because that's his life. That's how Yu views the world. We are on this little tiny orb surrounded by death. That's all there is to everything. That's what everything means to me, is that there's not really any meaning behind it. You're born, you suffer, and you die. That's life. And that's what he brings to his match. That's what he shows Jay. That's what he makes Jay experience by just hurting him. By hurting him, he lashes out. That's what happens a lot of the times. When people are just consumed with negative emotions, they lash out and they harm other people. And that's what happens here. And Jay doesn't make any attempt to fight back against it. He just takes it all. He gets knocked down. He bleeds all over the ring. And he just keeps getting back up. Why? Jay's coach asked him, why are you interested in boxing? Why are you interested in doing this? And Jay's reasoning is that, as mentioned, boxers dedicate like their entire lives to preparing for each match. They spend all their days thinking about the person that they're going to be in the ring against. And when, they eventually ring in the match, they let it all out. They bring all of that to bear against the person, or rather with the person that they're in the ring with. Kind of sounds like love. You bring everything with you, and all you do is think about this other person who is kind of casting aside any sort of masks, any kind of pretending. There's no pretending in the ring. At least not if you're being a serious boxer. You show who you really are to this other person. That's kind of like love. And that's why Jay wants to box. is because he likes being able to connect with other people, this feeling of love that he has for boxing and for other boxers, being able to see what boxing means to them, what their life has been like, being able to see that and connect with them. That's why he likes boxing. That's what boxing means to him. Boxing is loving people. It's kind of weird to think about in real life and considering how violent it is, but when you want to get like philosophical with it, because Jay is someone who doesn't care about winning or losing. Victory is a very cold-hearted thing, and in boxing you either win or lose. But Jay doesn't care at all about the competitive aspect. For him, he's like the type of person who says it doesn't matter if you win or lose, all that matters is you had fun. In a way that's not stupid and pretentious. Kind of nice. And that is why he wants to have this fight with you. He wants to be able to connect with him. He wants to be able to show him the light. Whatever light that you got a glimpse of when they first met. That's why he wants to be here. That's why he's willing to suffer through 12 rounds. Is he needs to make this connection with you. He wants to tell him something. Because he doesn't have much time. He's dying. He's got some anime disease that we don't really see any clear symptoms of other than him saying he's dying and the fact that his body is kind of deteriorating. Doesn't have much time left. He's got to connect with him now. So even his coach, who has always doubted him, is inspired by him. And there's a point. When we get to the 12th round, Jay has been so beaten that he's kind of like having memory problems. And he's like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And his coach, who's been with him seemingly since he was a kid, and who has never really understood or believed in the same ideas as Jay, tells him, love. You're here for love. You're here because you wanted to meet you and tell him something. Go do that. So he does. While Yu embodies all of the darkness and despair and death and meaninglessness of life, Jay embodies all of the light and hope and meaning that comes from life. And so, as the match begins to meet its end, Yu is exhausting himself. Not necessarily getting tired. I mean, he is kind of sweating. He's sweating so much that like his hair gel is coming apart, so his hair is going back down. He is falling apart. He is falling out of this trance that he's in. He's coming away from this thing that Kay wanted to turn him into. And Kay's like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit, if this goes on any longer, all my work is going to be undone. Because as horrible as your situation may be, as many negative emotions as you may have, you're not able to rage about it forever. Emotions are not something that you can feel forever. Eventually, they'll wear off. And when you're letting it all out, you're not letting it all just be bottled up inside you like you had been this whole time. You're letting it all out. You're sharing it with someone else. Those feelings subside a little bit. They don't disappear entirely, but you're not consumed by them like you were before. You're no longer drowning in your own misery. You're letting it out. So Yu's kind of falling out of this trance that he's in, and Jay keeps pressing onward. Now he's actually advancing on Yu. He takes one of his punches and doesn't fall down. He actually parries one of Yu's punches, which is something no one else has ever done. No one has ever had the speed or precision or skill to fucking deflect one of Yu's punches. Just to remind you, even though he's battered and bloody and dying, Jay is like, nah, get that out of here. And all of the people that Yu has fought are watching. Aaron's wife is watching. And all of them, as they're watching this, are thinking about all of the hardships and terrible things that have happened to them in their lives. And then you realize where they are now. Jean's parents were neglectful and abandoned him, but now he has a loving wife and a daughter. Yuto lost both of his parents when he was a small child, and had to work and struggle very hard just to meet the baseline skill to be a professional boxer. But now, he helps out at his coach's gym, and he has a wife, and he ends up having a kid, which is nice. Marco and Fabrizio grew up in poverty. They had to be terrible people for the sake of supporting their mom, but their mom is alive now. They're able to sit down with their mom and their sister and have a happy family dinner. Viktor apparently lost, I'm assuming, a girlfriend in the past, but I mean, look at the way the guy's living now. And Aaron's wife is currently experiencing the suffering and unfairness of the world, but as we've seen from everyone else, and as we're about to see, eventually you can move on from that. There is always a way to be able to move on and still find some kind of happiness and meaning in your life, no matter how bad things are for you. And finally, Yu is cornered. He has nowhere to go. He looks exhausted. Jay, battered, bloody, still determined. And he throws a punch, very slowly, not a fast punch, not the kind of punch that would hurt someone, but the kind of punch that will connect with someone. And for the first time in his career, Yu takes a punch, full on. He's not grazed like he was with Aaron, full on, right to the forehead. Jay's glove connects with Yu. Something that Kay told him to avoid throughout the entirety of his career. You know, from this day on to the day you quit boxing, never take a punch. So now finally, someone has connected with Yu, you know, kind of a double meaning there. And what does Jay have to say to him? It's okay. That's all he has to say to him. And that's really all he needs to say to him, because that's what Yu has needed someone to do for him. Yu is the loneliest person in the world. He has no one. So there's never been anyone in his life, after all of the awful things that have happened to him, to be able to say, it's okay. Everything's going to be fine. It's not explicit what the light is that Yu sees. I think it could be hope. I feel like the primary thing is hope, but it's also love. It's something that gives you the drive and motivation to press on in spite of how dark and full of suffering the world is. Because during the fight, Yu is wondering, I heard, supposedly, that the God who created this world loves us, and he loves us so much that he died for us. I want to know, if you love me, why did you let me suffer? Why didn't you save me? So here's the thing. The boxer has a Christian message, basically. It's about the suffering of Christ. And Jay is pretty much Jesus. Big surprise. Because even the old lady at the orphanage talking to Carmen is like, talking about a God who loves us so much that he's willing to die for us, as we see Jay pressing onward, leaving bloody footsteps as he continues to suffer in the ring because he wants to connect with you and show him love, show him that there is some kind of meaning to life. There's no big grand purpose for our existence. There's no grand plan. There's not anything like that. You don't have a specific reason for your individual existence. But you are here. You are capable of receiving love from other people and showing it to others. That is able to make life bearable. That is what makes life worth living, regardless of how bad it is. So this is an actual, like, good Christian message. It's not just Superman T-posing with a lens flare behind him going, oh my god, it's just like Jesus on the cross. No. This is, like, the actual principles of Christ. It is one of the best, like, Christian messages I've ever seen in anything. Because it's not like fucking pretentious or anything. It's really good. They do a really good job. We're able to say Jay is literally Jesus without being, like, dismissive about it. Because he actually embodies the ideas of dying because you love someone, taking on suffering because of someone else's sins, because you love them. Really well. It's really great. And ultimately, Yu does finally see the light. Because Jay was not willing to hurt him. He did not want to hurt Yu. He just wanted to be able to talk to him. Yu let out all of his negative feelings and emotions onto Jay, and Jay just took it all and was like, I understand. It's okay. That is some great shit. The strongest thing about the boxer is not the fights. Not even the art, which is pretty good. It's the themes. It's the messaging. This webtoon has some of the strongest, most consistent messaging of pretty much anything like this that I've ever read. It's just fucking amazing. It's absolutely great. I love this webtoon. I fucking love it so much. I'm glad that apparently we're going to be getting, like, more stuff about Injay and Ryu now that Yu's story is going to be over. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with them, because I think Injay is very clearly set up as someone to be kind of an inheritor of Jay's ideas, even though they never really met. It's something that he just developed on his own. So I'm greatly looking forward to that, because this stuff has been absolutely great. I know some people complain about, like, maybe the Jay fight being kind of anticlimactic, but it's just so good and consistent with the themes and messaging of the series that I just can't help but absolutely love it. I've wanted to do a video on the channel talking about the boxer for a long time, so I'm hoping that this was good. I'm hoping that this was fairly coherent. I know this was a long video, but I had a lot to say about the series and about its characters. It just has such good writing, which I'm a sucker for. Listen, the art can be mid, the fights can be meh, but if something has really good characters with great writing, I'm along for the ride. So I hope you enjoyed, and with that, that's all I have to say about the boxer. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, if you're interested in joining my Patreon, I have reviews for the boxer on there. I'm doing them a little bit inconsistently because I'm waiting to get access to some of the chapters that are currently behind the Fast Pass. So they're not coming out like super consistently, but they're coming. Yeah. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Until next time, take care.